I'm Tango Hotel Charlie, and this is Man vs. Weed. I just ate a couple edibles and smoked a fat joint. I'm ready to podcast. Just to give you a little background about me, I've been smoking weed since I was 12. That's 30 long years now. I grew up on the west coast of Canada, British Columbia. Have you ever heard of BC Bud? That's where that shit comes from. My parents grew weed, my friends grew weed, I grew weed, everybody I knew grew weed. So needless to say, I know good weed. I'm not trying to be, grandiose or call myself a connoisseur or any of that shit. I'm not a weed sommelier. So, take it all with a grain of salt. Everybody's different. That being said, if you ain't got that dank, you ain't getting my money. That's how this shit works. And sadly, on the legal market, I haven't seen a lot of very impressive cannabis. But I've seen a lot of high numbers for prices that don't reflect the quality of the cannabis that you're paying for. So I'm very reluctant to switch over to any sort of legal market. So that's what this podcast is going to be. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put my lungs on the line to try this legal cannabis and see if any of it is good enough to pull me away from the dark side that is the black market. And I got to tell you, from what I've seen so far, it's not looking great. So here's how this is going to work. My lovely wife of 22 years is very cannabis friendly, but she doesn't take part herself. So she doesn't know it like I know it. So how we're going to do this is she's going to go into a legal cannabis store and pick cannabis based on whatever criteria she comes up with or the bud tender helps her out with, whatever the case may be. Then she's going to bring it to me and I'm going to smoke it. It's a tough job, but some motherfucker has to do it. And I don't care if they're large producer or micro grow or $4 a gram or $12 a gram, they're each going to have their day in the sun. I'll be looking at things like the packaging. Is it a Russian nesting doll of cardboard and plastic? Of course, I'll be looking at price. That's important. Are they gouging you or are they charging a fair price for the product? We'll be looking at the bud size and quality. Did they trim it well? Did they just give you a bunch of little pea buds, popcorn buds, or did they give you a nice size bud? And how well is it trimmed? Was it ran through a machine or was it done by hand? Did they leave chunks of stem and leaf on there or is it nice and clean? We'll be checking the moisture content. Did they pack a Bovita pack in there? And did they cure it correctly? Or is it just rattling around in the bottom of a plastic jar dry as a popcorn fart? When you open a jar of weed of any size, it should hit you in the face with that funk. A person across the room should be like, damn, what you got over there? So we're going to check that smell. Terpenes are important, so we're going to definitely be keeping a nose on that. We'll be checking for stickiness. They don't call it sticky icky for nothing. That shit is important. That's the medicine. How well does it burn? Does it stay lit? Do you have to light it every 3 seconds? Does it snap, crackle, and pop and send sparkles shooting everywhere? These are indications of how well it was flushed. Because nobody wants to smoke excess nutrients that are stored in the plant. Another thing I'll be looking at is the high. Does that shit get you high? Because that seems important. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So, quality of effect is important. And again, we'll be keeping an eye on that ash the entire time to make sure it's either nice and milky white or it's dingy black and gray. Obviously, if it's dark gray, it wasn't flushed correctly. And if it's nice and white, they gave it a couple of weeks of pure clean water at the end of its life. Alright, now that we got that bullshit out of the way, I think we can start smoking some cannabis. Now, the first strain I picked for the first episode is called Cherry Punch, and it's produced by Black Market. I'm not going to get too into it here, but let's just say corporate weed LARPing as legacy weed ain't it. This cannabis was $13 a gram, and it came to $16 a gram with tax. If you bought an ounce of it, that would be $450 an ounce. So I hope you're rich. They're calling it 23 to 29% THC, so I guess life is like a gram of weed. You never know what the fuck you're going to get. I wish I had an option to give them $6 to $13 a gram. It comes in at 1% CBD and 2.7% terps. Those terpenes break down as 26% limonene, 17% beta-pinene, 12% alpha-pinene, and 39% other. Boy, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to taste that other. They are called Alberta Craft Cannabis Inc., and they're out of Alberta. Obviously, The parentage of this strain is Cherry AK-47 crossed with Purple Punch. It was grown indoors with careful nutrient management. Okay, bro. It is an indica, if you give a shit about that. Me personally, indica, sativa, it doesn't matter. Either I get high or I don't. Okay, so let's smoke some weed. Right out the gate, the package looks like one of those little garbage can candies that you used to get when you were a kid. I hope that's not foreshadowing. Otherwise, it's pretty cool. It's easy to open, and I enjoy that. Some of these things are adult proof. It doesn't come with a bunch of excess cardboard and stuff like that, so in that sense, it's good. The buds are rattling around in the bottom, and obviously that's not great. When I open it up, there's no Bovita pack or anything, so that's not a good sign. And there's not a lot of smell. When you open a jar of weed, that shit should punch you in the face. And there's really not a lot there. When I pick it up and put it right to my nose, then I can smell it. But otherwise, there's not a lot of smell, really. The buds are very dry, popcorn buds, very small. Now, I only got a gram, so make of that what you will, but popcorn buds. I had hoped that after I broke it up, it would release some of those terpenes and whatnot, but unfortunately, even after I broke it up, there was just no smell. It was very faint. It's advertised as musky berry aroma with an earthy flavor and soft and sweet berry finish, but honestly, I only got the musky part. And even that, I had to put it right up to my nose to smell it. They also claim that it was delicately packaged, and as far as I can tell, rattling around in the bottom of a plastic container doesn't seem that delicate. It is as dry as possible. Like this shit, you crumble it up with your fingers and it turns to dust. And normally when you break up a bud with your fingers, it's going to be sticky. Even if it's dry, by the time you crunch up a whole gram of weed, your fingers should be sticking together and getting pretty hashy. But this had nothing like that. There was no hash, there was no stickiness, still no smell after I broke it up. Just dry, dry, dry. And this is a problem with legal cannabis because in order to meet the limits that Health Canada sets on them, a lot of them just irradiate their weed. And obviously irradiating weed damages the trichome heads, which is where all the medicine and terpenes and stuff are stored. So you don't want that shit getting damaged. Anyway, so all that aside, I ended up rolling it up in a joint, as I always do. And it rolled up okay. It wasn't so dry that it was annoying and a pain in the ass to roll and falling out like dry sand. It rolled up, but, it's still, there was no moisture content. It burned well. It stayed lit. I didn't have to relight it. There was no sparkling or crackling and popping. No seeds, no bad flavor, but no great flavor either. Just musky. None of that berries that I was told about twice in the introduction. None of that. Just straight musk. Just straight other. That 39% other really came through. Now, while it did burn okay, that brings us to the ash. Unfortunately, the ash was very dark, dingy, gray, black color, which indicates that it wasn't flushed for long enough, which is a common problem because these guys are trying to turn this stuff out and make that money. So while they talk about taking great care, the results are obvious when you smoke it, and you can tell by looking at these things like the ash and the burn. And in this case, I'm sad to report that it was a very ugly ash. And that brings us to the medicine. Did it work? Did it get me high? Yes, it did. It did get me high. It had nothing fantastic or anything like that. It didn't knock me on my ass. I smoked a whole gram straight to my head, and, I was ready to go for another one in about an hour. Which, if you want to spend $16 a gram and smoke that every hour, that's going to get costly real fast. So, if it was $6 a gram, that would be fine, and I could smoke that all day. But unfortunately, it's not. It was $16 after tax. And I don't give a fuck who you are or how much money you have. That is too much. So there you go. That's that. Was it great? No. Was it bad? No. It was just okay. Is just okay the experience you're going for? So the pros, it tasted okay, it burned okay. It gave you an okay high and had minimal packaging. The cons were that it was dry, it had no smell, it had a black ash, and a high price. Is this going to sway me from the black market? Is this going to pull me away from high quality, decently priced cannabis? The answer is no. This one did not do it. Sorry, Black Market. And that's it. That's how easy this is. Smoke weed, talk shit. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter. I'm Tango Hotel Charlie at Street Villain. The other day I ran a survey to see if anybody would be interested in paying $448 an ounce for black market cherry punch, and 7% said yes they would, while 93% of 71 votes said no fucking way. And you know what? I agree. Free the weed.